Hey, everybody, I'm Justin Draeger.
And I'm Tim Maggio.
Welcome, everybody, to the Productivity Playground podcast, where creativity meets efficiency in work and life. This is a place where all of us can explore how top performers from all industries stay productive, all while maintaining their creative edge. Tim, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
And how many years left do you think you have to work?
I think it's probably somewhere between 20 to 30, but if I was dreaming today, I'd say 10.
Okay, all right. So I don't know if that thought is like lifting or depressing to you in this moment.
If I was, if on days I'm feeling motivated, it's, 10 years, I can do this, I can really work for it. But, when I get into the realistic, I'm like, okay, yeah, I gotta grind for quite a while still.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm guessing you are maybe not, maybe you're approaching the midpoint of your career. And today we're going to talk about that before we jump into the sandbox with an artist that you and I both love and have gotten to know over the last summer. I've gotten to know over the last 6 months, not only as a global artist performing on some of the biggest stages in the US, but also an entrepreneur and an author. But before we get to that, I feel like we should acknowledge like all the positive feedback we heard from our friends and colleagues this last week as we sort of jumped into this. You were at a professional conference this last week. Did you hear anything?
Yeah, I had probably tens of 20, I mean, even I'd say about 50-ish people come up and ask me, like, I mean, what? You're doing a podcast and what is it about? They wanted to learn all about it. And they were like, how did you come up with this idea? And I think the one thing, that is related to this podcast that is probably the most interesting question is like, how do you have time to do that in addition to everything else you're doing? And, my answer was, I don't know. We just figure it out.
Yeah, there is a little bit. So I think we talked about this with Greg last week, which is like there is a part of this that's like scratching a creative itch for us. And then there's the part of this where it's like just doing it and learning as you go. In fact, this is going to be a little disjointed because you and I decided to re-record this intro because we wanted to acknowledge like, yeah, it's like your professional networks are supportive, and that's been refreshing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been LinkedIn seems to be where a lot of the conversation has been. People have sort of reached out. We're trying to do this very quickly and do this all in like 20, 25 minutes where we bring on a guest and you and I talk about some creativity and productivity hacks. But bottom line is thanks for all the support. Thanks for all the people that are listening and tuning in. And obviously, like, does the world need like another podcast? Probably not. But for you and I, it was sort of like, hey, we want to do something. Let's see if we can learn from some people in our network and learn from people who are clearly doing something right. So, with that in mind, let's go back to my first question, which was about how much longer people have to work, because the real question comes from an HBR article taking stock where you are in life and more specifically the midpoint in your career and really asking yourself, what do you want to experience? What do you want to accomplish in like the next 10 years? And you don't have to do that at the midpoint. You can do
Right.
that at any time. One of the questions that really resonated with me was if you're at a time of transition career wise, maybe at the midpoint of your career, and the question is, what will I regret not having done or learned 10 years from now? And I think it's a pretty powerful question. So let me ask you, Tim, like, one, have you reached the midpoint of your career, do you think? And two, do you think, have you thought about like what you'll be doing in 10 years or what you wish you'll have done in 10 years?
I mean, if I'm at the midpoint in my career in 10 years, I guess that means retirement. So, I mean, life's looking pretty good if that's the
so
case.
so you're what I'm hearing you say is you're probably not at the midpoint yet.
No, no, not yet. But the question was still really good and reflective for me. I do have a feeling that you're sending me these questions to stress me out, though.
Why does this make you feel stressed?
I think it feels like an unsurmountable question in some ways, but also an important question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Just because you feel like it raises the stakes so much about what you should be doing in the next 10 years.
Yeah, it feels like I have to make some crucial decisions like right now in order to make that 10-year plan happen.
I think one of the reasons the article sort of framed it in like a good question to ask around your career midpoint, which I realize, you and I are, as we talked about in our intro episode, like we're at different points in our career. I'm Gen X. I think you said you're millennial. And so we are sort of straddling sort of a divide here where I'm, God help me, past my midpoint. Not because I ever want to necessarily stop being productive, quote unquote, but I think I do want to retire one day, and you're sort of approaching your midpoint at some point, here in the future. But at the midpoint, it's sort of a good point to just sort of take stock and think, all right, you've sort of dealt with the fact that I'm speaking to you, Tim. So what you can look forward to, you've maybe when you were growing up as a kid, you had dreams that you'd be, a rock star. You had dreams that you'd be running for president. You had all these grand dreams, and then at the midpoint of your career, you've realized you're not going to reach any of those, and you haven't reconciled that part yet, Tim, but it's coming. And so then you start thinking, okay, a little more realistically, what is important to me? And in the next 10 years, as I am on my way past my midpoint, what are the most important things to me? But then I think you don't have to wait to your midpoint to think about that. You can think about that at any point. So Tim, let me turn to you. Like, what are the things in the next 10 years you might want to
Yeah.
accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, and luckily I wasn't a really ambitious child, so I don't have that, that cliff to fall off of. But no, jokes aside, when I was reading through this article, it actually really reminded me of a question that you had posed to me before. Actually, I think you've posed it to me a couple of times, where it's like, you've got to be honest with yourself. Like, you can only have so many priorities in life. Is it a title? Is it influence? Is it money? Or is it personal time and family time? And that's really stuck with me, because in this article reminded me of that, because when you're thinking about your 10-year plan, it doesn't necessarily dictate what does your 10-year plan have to be, or what do you want 10 years to look like from now. It just says, what do you want to be in 10 years? And that success can be defined differently for everyone. So, right now, when I answer that question, my personal and family time is really kind of the top for me right now, because I have a 5 and 7 year old, and I still, have aspirations that maybe one day I'll have more influence in an organization, maybe at the executive level. I do have dreams of being kind of in a position where I'm able to influence a really large portion of people, whether that's in the space I'm currently in or in another space that genuinely helps the world in a better way. Like that's kind of like my big picture of, I just want to help people and I want to make the world a better place. And that's where I've always kind of leaned. But right now, the priority first is, my kids, my wife, and I recently started jujitsu. So also in 10 years, I'd like to be a purple or brown belt, but I'm realistic that I don't think I'll be a black belt in 10 years.
I don't know. I don't know all the belts, but I believe in you, Tim. So I want you to know that. I feel like that's helpful. And I sort of wish, I remember being in college once and a professor telling me in like office hours, I was sitting there and they told me something that was like, whatever it is that you really want, that's what you'll get. And I remember feeling like, oh, come on. Like that's, I just at that time in my life as a college
Sounds like
student feeling
BS.
like, yeah, like, well, how do you know that? Like, how do you know I'll be successful? Or how do you know? And I think the point they were making is like, you may not acknowledge it to yourself, but where you spend your time is where you'll find success. And there's a little bit of like, what I feel like they were saying, if I'm contextualizing this in this article, but also here in this podcast, is like, where you spend your time is like where you're productive. So if you spend your time, for example, if even if you haven't acknowledged it to yourself, if the number one thing for you is like moving up in an organization, like influence within an organization, then you're going to spend a lot of time at that organization. You're going to spend a lot of work hours. You might jump from company to company because you're going to be looking for the next title. And if you're title chasing, then you will get that. Now, the things you might sacrifice to get that might be some of the other things you just talked about. I'm not saying it in all cases, but I sort of look back now at the advice that college professor gave me, and I sort of get it. And so this is where I'm sort of like, there is a role for creativity, which is like creatively speaking. If you want to be intentional over the next 10 years, what experiences do you want to have and where do you want to be? And then where do you invest the time to make those things happen in baby and maybe giant steps? The other thing I think about is sort of like the experiences. And the article talks a little bit about how that can extend life a little bit. And there's some truth to that. Research shows that memory markers, whether they actually extend your life, like we all have a finite amount of time to live, but memory markers make it seem the perception of your life is longer because you've broken up the mundanity, the routine of your life with these events, whether that's children, pets, trips, experiences. And so you can sort of build in over time these new experiences and put in the time productively to work towards those experiences. So for you, it might be that brown belt. It might be milestones with your family, whatever those milestones are.
Right.
All right, Tim, let's wrap up recess and head over to the sandbox. Let's jump into our sandbox. This week, I'm absolutely thrilled to have an extraordinary guest with us today, Shawna Nichols, better known as DJ Shawna. Her career is nothing short of incredible. She's from being the official DJ and producer for the Milwaukee Bucks, where she's played a pivotal role in energizing the stadium during their historic championship run, which I think was back in like 2021, maybe, if I'm thinking about that right. Yeah. She most recently, she's taken center stage at NBA All-Star games. She was spinning tracks at the Democratic National Convention. Her reach is global. Her impact is pretty undeniable. And that's just sort of scratching the surface. We'll get into more of her career, which spans a lot of different industries. But I got to know Shauna just a little bit ago when we were lucky enough to have her DJ at an annual conference in my last job. And what struck me is just the sheer amount of energy she brings to the stage, but also her ability to put people at ease. Shauna has she has a lot of EQ, sort of that emotional intelligence, because during one particularly potentially tense moment, Shauna sort of played a track that kept the moment light, but didn't distract from sort of the seriousness of the moment, where we were sort of having sort of a call to truth moment with some of our colleagues professionally. I'm really beyond excited to have you here, Shauna, and just know how you juggle it all and continue to set the bar higher and higher. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of the sandbox, so thanks for letting me play with you today. I'm looking forward to this.
You've performed at a lot of major events, and I follow you on social and just get to see all the amazing things you get to do, from NBA All-Star games, like I said, the Democratic National Convention. I'm sort of curious. You are in the creative arts, but you're also an entrepreneur. How do you mentally and creatively prepare for these seemingly high stakes performances?
Thanks. It's funny. I'm sort of like processing my summer still, because that conference you mentioned is part of it. And I feel like it's been a whirlwind, and I'm looking forward to like creating a newsletter, mostly so I can write everything out and like kind of, if people are interested, they can read it, but like I need to process it. But it's a very interesting question, because I didn't ever think that this would be a full-time job. So I played professional basketball, and I came back to the real world, and I was training basketball players and working on elite like players' skill development while DJing for fun, which became a byproduct of me like not drinking and then not knowing how to act right, I guess, in social environments. I never knew what to do with my hands, and constantly drinking water really bothers people, I guess. So staying hydrated is like a weird thing. And so DJing was just like for fun and how I was social. And somehow it like just took off. And I'm just riding that wave. It's been just like oh goodness. When I say how long I've been DJing, then I admit how old I am. But it's like 17 years that I've been DJing, and probably, I don't know, around a decade or so of like professionally doing this. But every event is exactly like what you just said. It's special and it's unique. And I appreciate you. I'm going to own it, recognizing my EQ, because I do say that that's like my superpower as a DJ, is I can feel a lot. And I'm a point guard. So I try to see the whole room. I try to see everybody. It's not just the people that want to dance. Like that's easy. It's the people all the way in the back of the room who didn't even want to be at that morning session that I wanted to like impact. And That's how I look at every event. In every event, I go in there and I kind of have an idea. There's always pre-meetings and things like that for major events. But when I'm working for someone else, I want to make sure I hit that vibe right. So from this, I mean, again, like you mentioned, the conference I worked for you, like, that's a corporate event. And then DNC, I was billed with at House of Blues with Jimmy Eat World. So I played a set for them. I come home to Milwaukee and I DJ for Kamala Harris's Milwaukee Pfizer Forum rally the night that she's officially like nominated to run for president. And then 3 days later, I opened for Lil Jon. And so like, if you like, it's just like, I have goosebumps talking about it. And so I love having a lot of tools in my toolbox.
With the creativity, you sort of have to go in, you have to have a game plan. Then with that, like you said, you have to sort of open yourself up to be a little bit on the fly and adjust to whatever's filling up that space. So how do you come in? And I think for anybody in any industry, there's a little bit of that has to take place. You sort of have your game plan, you put in the prep work, but then you have to fall back on this idea that when you're in the moment, you're going to have to rely on the experience, the memory, your professionalism, and just kind of go with whatever is being required of you in that moment. Was there ever a time in that 17 years where you didn't have that confidence, or you've sort of built that muscle memory over time?
Yeah, I make a lot of sports cliches because I think that's what basketball and sports like taught me is just, like how to play well with others, and then how to read and react. That's my favorite offense is, like I want to 5 out. Let's see what happens. And that same blueprint that honestly I applied as a basketball player and to make it as a professional, I've utilized in this other non-normative career to apply that same blueprint here. And so for me, it's experience. I believe in the 10,000 hour theory. That's when my career statistically kind of started changing.
This is like the Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
If you spend 10,000 hours trying to learn something, at that point, you sort of reach this guru savant level of expertise.
I appreciate you using those words, but that's just when my career felt like it was legit. Guru and savant. I don't know that I'll ever get to that level, but I just love it. I love what I get to do. I love making people happy. And so I believe it takes experience. It takes reps. It takes failure, right? Like I have to turn the ball over. I have to make a mistake. And I think what I've learned with music and the musicality of it is I'm never going to play the wrong song, if that makes sense. I might not play the song that makes the most sense, but I'm never going to play the wrong song. And so there's these times where you can just be ready. And a lot of the time, honestly, you walk in the gym, you throw it up and you get lucky and it goes in. And that moment you're referencing, I kind of got lucky, honestly. It was just what happened. You all gave me a microphone too, so I could fill the space there with just whatever. I don't even remember what I said, but yeah, it's just experience, and you have to have confidence. And that's what I chased as the feeling that I had as a professional basketball player. I missed putting that jersey on. So DJ Shawna, and I'm air quoting that, is my alter ego. It's not who I am all the time.
Yeah, I think there's something there that people can learn in whatever profession they're in. There's sort of you put in the work, you put in the time, and you can fall back on that. And all of us sort of have this alter ego, even when I go up and speak in front of audiences.
Hold on, Justin. I'm not going to let you say go up and speak, because I would be remiss if I didn't tell them that you rode a Harley through the convention center to the stage.
That's true. That is a fact, right? So I was sort of raising the temperature, maybe raising the stakes a little bit. But I wonder if you feel this too, because I'm a little bit of a performer, and when you're giving a presentation, whether that's in front of a board or an audience of 20 or 2,000, there's a performance. But I wonder if you feel this too. The creativity in that is I'm putting on a performance that's as much for me as it is for them. There's a connection that's happening there. And I find creative space in there for both of us, even though I'm relaying sometimes facts and figures, there's a meaning there, that there's a creative connection.
I love that. And I try to read a lot, not a lot. I want to read more. But that's my ikigai And like that's what makes me happy, right? Like it's like a talent I have, what the world needs, and then like what I'm good at. And when all those circles come together, that beautiful Venn diagram is your ikigai. And I think to your point, again, we can have this blueprint, but there has to be this like authenticity. And that's something that I take a lot of pride in, is that while I'm not always that alter ego as DJ Shawna, it is me. I don't have to fake it. I don't have to pretend. So when I have to like air quote again, turn it on, it's just more energy. Like I'm not always 100% all the time. I recharge in quiet. I love being home. I don't go out. Like I love movies. I love water, and I love working out. So it's full circle.
Yeah, it's a part of you though.
Yeah.
This isn't some disjointed part of you. It's a part of you that might be more expressed. And I've noticed, the other part that I know about you is you do express this in other ways. You've got a clothing line, Dare to Be. You're a published author. You've got other creative ventures that you also have to be productive in. And I wonder, how do you stay productive through all of these creative ventures? How do you ensure that you're not too diffused?
I think each of them feeds the other, if that's a fair way to look at it. And so when I really wanted to take DJing seriously, I studied the greats, kind of as you would. And I wanted something that was bigger than me. So the DJ I actually looked at that was inspired me was Tiesto, the world's #1 DJ for years and years and years. Just an amazing DJ and producer. And even just from his logos, he has his name logo that every DJ has, right? That just says our name in whatever fonts and graphic you like. But then he has this beautiful other like Firebird Phoenix logo that's just cool. That if you're in the scene, it's Tiesto. So I was like, okay, we have the DJ Shawna logo, but like I want something that's bigger than me. And that's how Dare to Be kind of came to fruition. Was, again, sports taught me I'm not going to always be able to be a DJ. I can't always play basketball. And I learned that. And whoever makes that decision, whether it's myself or somebody else, or the emails start coming, the requests start coming, I want to have something else. So that's what Dare to Be is. And it feeds DJing. So just before we started, this call, I'm actually working on a party that I want to throw. That's my brand, that I want to curate the vibe. I want to curate the experience, be in charge of all the music and what I want to do, respectfully to everybody that I work for. I just want to do what I want to do without like any guidelines, I guess.
That sort of creativity that's feeding other creative ventures that you're in, it sort of maybe helps with the productivity because it's not so diffused. It feels like it's interconnected with everything else that you're doing.
It is. And it keeps, so like sometimes the music, I mean, again, this summer, I feel like I worked. So admittedly, like I drive in silence more often than not. Once I'm done listening to my 2 podcasts, then I'm just kind of like, well, shut it off. And because it all kind of sounds the same eventually. And so the music side, I need the creativity. I need a reason to like want to dig for songs and organize and be ready for events, and having those things that like spark joy for me really do. And then I'm like, oh, well, I've got to be ready like for this. And, I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think too, I had a really cool opportunity this past weekend in Milwaukee. I got to DJ an amazing event that was on like our festival grounds. It was a free health and wellness event. And Donald Draeger had a workout that I got to DJ. And it was one of the coolest things I got to be a part of. And I prepped my butt off for it because I knew there was going to be a lot of people. And like, it was exactly what you're talking about, was like, I didn't want to do it, to be honest. Like I was tired. I had a summer. This was the end of, again, August, beginning of September. I'm feeling tired. And I pushed through because I always remind myself that like, this could be the only chance that I get to make that impression or to show. Like I've DJ'd for Donald before, but not as like a workout standpoint. And so like, I want to show him what I'm capable of. And that stuff inspires me. And then it all just like goes like, and I don't know how I keep it. I don't keep it organized, to be honest. That's the question. It's like, it's a mess. I have 17 Excel spreadsheets. I'm looking at like all my tabs right now. 7 Canva pages are open. And
people might find solace in that. Not everybody is like necessarily an organized to a T type person.
Because like so many things come in, and that it's like, because I also like DJ. So when like emails are coming in, I can't respond to those. So there's also this like disconnect in like what I do for a job and then like the real life side of it that I take enjoyment in, because the way I do anything is the way I want to do everything. So even when I don't want to, like that's what I'm doing in September is I'm chasing money and sending invoices.
All right. Every high performer though, like yourself, has to be extremely productive to just like achieve the level of success you've achieved, to turn out the sheer amount of stuff that you're turning out. So what's the one productivity secret or habit that you rely on most to stay ahead, to maintain your edge?
Honestly, take care of your physical and mental health. I think if you don't take care of yourself, all of that, everything else falls to the wayside. And this is a tough industry. Again, goofy hours, crazy. Like sometimes I can be at the arena at 7 a.m. Sometimes I'm not coming home from the arena until 11:30, 12 at night. And so to figure out how I'm going to eat, what I'm going to do, prepping food, when am I going to work out? Am I going to meditate today? All of those things for me really impact my awareness, my ability to be on, even if I'm lacking sleep. Like all of those things that were taught in kindergarten, those.
Yep. Take care of the machine.
Yeah.
And like nobody else will prioritize your machine than you.
Yeah.
DJ Shawna Nichols, thank you so much for being here. I continually stand amazed at all the stuff that you're doing. You bring such a positive energy to all the rooms that you're in. I was super glad to meet you over the summer, and really glad that you were able to come on and spend some time with us in the Sandbox. Thanks so much.
I'm absolutely honored to be here. Thank you for having me. This has been fun. The best castle I've built in the Sandbox in a long time. And people want to follow me. I have 2 songs that I've written and produced. Any platform that you listen to music, just search DJ Shawna. My first one's called I Won't Give Up. I wrote that during the pandemic. And then the other one's called Heart of a Fighter. And I have dreams that song will become the women's basketball championship anthem. So I keep putting it out in the universe. And then everything else on social media is at DJ Shawna. I love Instagram more than probably anything. It's just where the space I live in a little bit more. But I am, again, I'm saying this in person out loud. My goal by the end of September is to also have a newsletter. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'm going to try to collect emails that people that want to see this without any spam follow.
Well, Tim and I are pulling for that, for you and for that song to be the official song of the Women's National Championship. So here's to you, Shauna. Thanks very much for being on.
Thank you.
We've reached the end of another productivity adventure. Now, before you go back to your to-do list, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and wherever you can find podcasts. Make sure you sign up for the coming newsletter on our website. Your support means the world to us. So drop a follow on LinkedIn and Instagram at Productivity Playground Podcast. Share it with a friend, and we promise to keep bringing you the most productive content out there. Thanks again to DJ Shawna, and make sure you drop her a follow on Instagram. DJ Shawna, thanks for being a part of our podcast. And now we have a special treat. Here's a sample of DJ Shawna's song, Heart of a Fighter. Find it on Spotify today.
Put in my 10,000 hours, blood, sweat, and tears. Survive the highs and lows to get here, face my fears.